Howdy guys, Tommy with World War Stuff back again with another one. Thank you all so much for checking out the channel. We've gotten a lot of attention and likes and comments and new subscriptions here these last few videos, especially on the last one. Kind of blew up a little bit of a controversial topic about some FUD lore, some interesting wild stories that I encountered at the gun show last weekend. So there were a lot of different opinions and issues that came up in the comments, which I encourage. I always said I wanted to be a channel all about conversation, and having different opinions and things like that is not an issue. So drop those comments down below. We'll talk about this kind of stuff. But these last few videos, I've put out the call for opinions on what we should do with this wall rack behind me. You've been looking at the Garands and the 1903s for several weeks, and this was always meant to be kind of a rotating display. In the past, we've done different theaters of operation, different countries, different themes. So a couple videos ago, I put out the call for opinions on what we should do next and got a few. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. We're going to be speeding through, switching this out, and then later on, we'll talk about the different pieces that are going to go up on the wall. All right, stay tuned. All right, guys, so while the rack is clear, I just wanted to hit on a topic that I get a lot of questions about on pretty much all the platforms, whether it be I'm just posting photos or videos on YouTube or wherever. Everybody wants to know about these bases that hold up the rifles. And what I always tell people is, first and foremost, they come from a company called Secure-It. So visit secure-it.com. They sell accessories for safes and wall racks and things like that. But these bases do a really nice job of helping the rifles face outwards, having the front of the rifles face out instead of the underside of the rifle facing you. So on a lot of rifle racks, you'll see the back sides of the rifles, and that's fine. It just doesn't scratch the itch for me. I would much rather see the front of the rifles with the receiver rings and manufacturer's information and serial numbers and all that good stuff. Much prefer seeing that than the back side of the rifles. So secure-it.com is where these bases came from. We have 8 of them on the rack, able to hold 2 rifles apiece, so 16 rifles total on the rack. And basically you see these stair-stepped indentations here on the bases. Those help the rifles lay forwards so that they don't stand straight up and risk, falling off or falling out. They lean forwards on the rack itself. And then we've got the American flag banner there. We're going to keep it there. A lot of times when we rotate it, we'll put different flags of different countries or different banners, things like that. But we'll keep this one here for the topic that we're going to be putting on the wall today. And we'll put in another screw here in the middle just to hold this eyelet up, the center eyelet there. Make that a little nicer. But we'll be replacing that and putting new rifles up shortly. And there you have it. We're done. Yes, you probably guessed we did World War I rifles on the rack this time. And a couple of you guys have suggested it down in the comments. I thought it sounded like a cool challenge. Never done World War I rifles on the wall and wasn't quite sure I was going to be able to complete it. I don't collect a whole lot of World War I stuff, but I managed to find 15 different variations of different rifles, and then I bookended it with two Springfield 1903s, my favorite rifle of World War I, so I thought that seemed appropriate. But I'm not a big Mannlicher collector. I don't collect a lot of straight pulls and Austro-Hungarian stuff like that, so it was a little bit of a challenge digging out these guys, and the even bigger challenge was getting them to fit on the rack and fit together with the straight bolt handles. they would not fit side by side. So y'all saw me going through and flipping the bolts down. So we're going to have to just roll with it like that. But that's not the only thing on the wall. Obviously, we have the display down here below us. So let's take a look at that and we'll swap some stuff out, make it a little bit more World War I appropriate. All right, we did it. World War I stuff, accoutrements down on the bottom. Kept the bugle because that kind of fits. And then our rifles up top on the rack. Yes, World War I. We'll do another video pulling all these guys out, do a little bit more in-depth discussion on each one. But for now, hope y'all have enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.